Alright, so here we're going to go over the process of making a basic key and a door system. So if we remember, the key and the door, kind of the process behind that will be kind of the foundation that you can use for any of your mechanics going forward. You know, it's a very kind of classic mechanic foundation, so we're going to run through it here. And this is what we were doing for our blueprint basics number 2. So just to show, if I press play in my scene here, I got a key. Ignore that one. I got a key and a door. So if I walk up to my door, if you look at the top left of my viewport, I overlap the door. It's going to say you need the key. So it's checked when we run in the door. It's going to check, do we have the key? And we do not. So then we go get the key. Get the key, run into it. Top left said you have the key. Now when we go back to our door, overlap it, it says door opening, runs our little animation. We can go get what we need. So that's kind of what we're going to build out here. So to get started, we're going to need a couple things. We're going to end up having 2 separate blueprints, as well as we're going to need to access our character blueprint to create a variable. So let me go ahead and just delete these from the scene so we can rebuild them. Rebuild our key and our door. And then first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my character blueprint and add a variable. So I'm starting in the first person project. You may be starting in the third person project. So exactly where you go will depend on what project you're using. But it's basically the same, just swap anytime I'm referencing first person with third person. So if I go to my content folder, then I find this first person folder, or third person, and go to the blueprints, and then I look for a BP underscore first person character. If you're in the third person level, it'll be BP underscore third person character. I'm going to double click that to open it up. Let's bring it over here and have a look. So this is our character blueprint, and this is where all the code, all the logic for our camera moving, us adding inputs, moving, jumping, moving the camera around, all of those controls are built out in our character controller. So this is the blueprint we are actually controlling when the game plays. This is our character. So anytime we want to do anything that would kind of be player based, some kind of inventory, health, a total score, money, anything that would be kind of related to the player and what their status is, we would build that in the first person or in the player blueprint or in the character blueprint. So what we need to do here is we need to just create a variable that will allow us, it'll be a means for us to track, do we have a key or do we not have a key? So we're going to do that by, if we go on the left-hand side down to this My Blueprint section, you'll see a little variable section. I already got one here, but I'll just make another one. We're going to hit the little plus icon to make a new variable, and we're going to create a new Boolean variable. Remember, a Boolean variable is just a true or a false, a yes or a no. And this is going to be our do we have the key. So I always like to frame Booleans as like questions because it makes sense to me, but you can name this variable whatever you want as long as when you reference it later, just know whatever you name the variable here is what you're going to be searching later. So if you want to follow along, I named my variable has key. True. So, in the end, it's like has key, true or false. Do we have the key? Do we not have the key? So since I already have this, I don't actually need this, so I'm just going to delete it. But you should have a new variable called has key. And that variable should be a Boolean. Great. So that's all we'll really need to do on the player. We're going to be referencing the player later, but we don't need to add any code or anything. We just need that little variable to be there. So if you add your variable in, you're good to go. So I'm going to leave this window open, but let's start building out our blueprints. So I'm just going to make a new folder here. And in here, we're going to end up making 2 blueprints. one for the key and one for the door. So let's start with the door. So when we make a new blueprint, we're going to right click, go to blueprint. We're going to choose type actor. Pretty much always for what we're doing, we're going to do actor. If we need the other ones, we'll cross that bridge when we get there, but we're just looking for actors. And so this first one's going to be BP underscore key. And I'll call this demo. Great. So we got our key. Let's open that up. Double click to open it up. So, all these blueprints start the same pretty much. We need a visual representation of our key, and we need a collision box to enable us to interact with it in some way. So I'm going to actually go in my geometry folder here, and I have a little key mesh. I'm just going to drag and drop my key mesh into here. Feel free to use like a cube or something, whatever. Or if you have your own custom mesh, you can use that as well. So I got my key, and then I'm also going to add a collision, and I'm going to add a sphere collision, and I'm going to rename it to trigger. As you add components to your blueprints, always remember to rename them so they don't just have random names that are non-descriptive. I like to rename them just so I know what's what, because there's going to be a lot of referencing, and we want to make sure things are, referenced properly. So we got our two components we need. We got our key and our collision. So if I want to check and make sure my key is the proper size, here's my blueprint in my content browser. I can drag and drop it into the world. And then, I can just check if I like that size. If I adjust the size in the blueprint by scaling it, it'll, change in the real world. So, maybe I want a big key, put it at a bit of an angle. Cool. Then we'll just kind of reposition it right in front of the door. Great. So now let's go to our event graph. So this is where we're going to build out that first functionality. So let's kind of think through it for a bit. So as the player, we need to walk up to the door, and it needs to check if we have the key or not. So when we pick up the key, we need to communicate with the player blueprint and basically tell it that you now have the key. Here's the key. So the way we do that is we're going to change that Boolean variable we made from false to true. So when we overlap our key here, we want to change that variable to true. So we need you to now just build that out. So this all is going to start with an overlap. So I'm going to select my trigger, scroll down to the bottom in the details, and grab the onComponent begin overlap. And so when we overlap, what we need to do is we need to communicate with the first person character blueprint and check that has key variable on. So to do that, starting with our event here, we're going to drag out from the execution pin, and we're going to search for cast to BP underscore first person character. So you'll see a variety here, but the one we're looking for is just called cast to BP first person character with nothing after it. A reminder, if you are using the third person project, you would instead search for BP underscore third person character, because this BP part is the name of that character blueprint. So whatever that character blueprint's named, that's what you would search. You're going to cast to that blueprint specifically. And then this cast is looking for an object input. It just needs to know kind of what it is. And we can do that by simply plugging in this other actor pin into the object. So what a cast does on a basic level is it basically allows us to, as the key, when we interact with the key, it's going to let us pretend we're the player blueprint and change stuff about the player blueprint. Access information, access data, access variables. So in our case, we're going to cast to the first person character to access that Boolean that has key variable and change it. So this node kind of enables us to do that. So as you can see, we're going to overlap, then as the BP, first person character, right here. So while we're pretending to be that character, we can drag out from here, and we can search set as key. And there it is. So remember, when we use a variable, when we call a variable, we're either going to set it, so we're going to change its value, or we're going to get it, we're just going to like receive whatever it's currently set to. And then also remember, I have to search for set has key, because that's what I named my variable. So if you named your variable something different, you're going to search set key, set I have the key, set key pickup, whatever you named it is what you search. So here we have set has key. And a set node looks a little bit like this. We have the execution input and output. This is where we actually set what the value is, and then we have the value output here if we need it. So just plug the execution in down the line, like a train, just one by one. And then we need to check the variable. So when we overlap, we're going to pretend we're the first person character, and then as the character, we want to set the has key to true. So make sure you check this box. It won't work if you don't check this box. And then after, to give ourselves a little visual feedback that it's working, let's go ahead and add a print string and make it say something like, you have the key. I like to use these print strings just as little visual representations that the code's running. Because if we tested it without the print string, it could work, but we'd have no indication that it worked. But if we add the print string, and it goes through the whole thing and gets to the print string, because remember it has to go through one by one. So if it ever has an error along the way, it won't ever get to the print string. But if it does, we know it works. And then finally, to finish it off, we're just going to destroy actor. So that'll just get rid of it in the scene so that, it's no longer there. So let's test it out. Compile, save, off, press play. There it goes. So there's our key. If it works, we should be able to run into it, should disappear, and we should get the message that we have the key. There we go. You have the key. Great. So now that blueprint is done. And all it did is it checked on that checkbox in our player blueprint to basically, we pick up the key. And it knows we picked up the key by turning that has key Boolean from false to true. So that's our first blueprint. There we go. So on to the door. So we're going to start the same exact way. We're going to right click. We're going to create a new blueprint. An actor, BP _ door demo. Make sure you're naming and being organized. Open that up. Just go over there. And let's have a look. So, like I said, we're starting the same way. So my door is going to go right in this gap here. So I'm going to add a, let's see, a cube. Rename it. This is my door. I'm also going to add a collision. And a box collision this time. Call it trigger. And that should be all we need. So start by drag your cube into the world, and then I'm going to resize it back in the blueprint to make it, door sized, make it fill the space. I try to resize things in the blueprint rather than resize the blueprint itself, because I could scale this here, but I'd rather it just be true to size rather than having any adjustments on it. So I'm just going to move the door, fill the gap, then I'm going to grab the trigger, just move it into position. Like this is the front, just scale it up, scale it out, put it somewhere that we can easily run into it and trigger it. Great. And that's kind of all we need to get going. So let's see. So now we got our base, so now we'll be able to overlap it and interact with it. So let's go to our event graph. We're going to use an overlap event. So let's get rid of those. Let's select our trigger. Let's go down to our begin overlap event. And so the first thing we need is, so when we overlap the door, we need the door to check if we have the key or not. So to check if we have the key or not, we're going to, again, communicate. We're going to cast to the first person character, and we'll cast there, and then we'll look and see, do we have the key? Is that variable set to true or false? If it's true, we can open the door. If it's false, we will not open the door. So it's going to start the same way as our key. We're going to cast to the first person character. Make sure you don't grab like this anim BP. We want the BP underscore first person character, or again, third person. We'll plug in the other actor. And then this time, as the first person character, instead of setting the has key variable, we just need to know what it is. So we're going to get has key. Again, what you search will depend on what you named your variable. I named mine has key, so I'm going to search get has key. Because again, we just need this information. We just need to know if this is true or false. Great. And then to utilize this, we're going to use a new node called a branch. So branches, we love a branch. We're going to use them often. And all it does is we input and then we output true or false depending on a condition. And the condition, it's looking for a Boolean variable, a true or false. And in our case, that true or false is our has key variable. So we can plug that in as a condition. Make sure you link them together like that. Link the execution pins. So now, when we trigger this, we're going to then branch true if we have the key, and we're going to branch false if we don't have the key. So obviously false, we can just do like another print string that just says need the key, just to have a visual representation, a little feedback so we know what's happening. And then when it's true, let's again do a print string. Print string that says, how about a door opening? Great. And just to test if everything's working, for the door opening, let's just do a destroy actor just to keep it simple. So when we overlap the door, it's going to make a call to the first person character. It's going to say, hey, do you have the key? If we have the key, it will answer true, and we will open the door and destroy the actor, kind of letting us through the door. And if we don't have the key, if it answers false, we are going to get a message that says, hey, you need the key. So let's try it out. File, save, and I'll press play. So to do everything, I'm going to first interact with the door. So if we get the message that the door don't work, you need the key. Here's our key. Pick it up, you have the key. So our variable should be set to true now. So now when I interact, it should disappear. So our thing. Sweet. So on a base level, on its most primitive roots, this is the door and the key. The key enables us to set that variable. That's like our kind of little inventory note. Do we have the key? Yes or no? And then once we set that, we can use that Boolean to, run a branch into a true or false situation. So from here, you have the false, whatever you want to happen when you don't have the key, you would now link all together down here. And then if when you do have the key, whatever that door, quote-unquote, door opening animation is, or door opening event, would happen up here. Because, we're always framing this as a key and a door, because it's just about, like, the key is the thing you need to do, and the door is the thing that will inevitably happen. So in order to open the door, to make a thing spawn, to kill a thing, you have to collect stuff, get rid of stuff, you have to get the key. So, you could kind of reframe everything as I have to get a key for a door. And this is that kind of logic. So we can take this, so that's that. You can expand upon this. If you can imagine, let's say you want multiple keys, you could make different key meshes that all reference different variables. You could have has key 1, has key 2, has key 3, and then on your door, there's a cool, if you do and search and Boolean, I could add, a couple pins, and then if we had 3 different key variables on our character blueprint, you could basically just have it check if all 3 of them are true. Because if all 3 of them are true, it'll output true, and if they aren't all true, it'll output false. So you can kind of expand the number of keys you need, based on that. Cool. But so just to show, that's that. You can utilize that how you want. Instead of just destroying the door, we want it to like gently slide open. So I'm just going to run through the process of doing that quick if you're interested. So to get that little sliding door animation, we need a bit of a overtime thing to happen. So over a certain amount of time, we want to change the location of our door. So we're going to do that using what's called a timeline. So I just searched up timeline. I'm going to call this door opening, and if we double click a timeline, it'll open it up and allow us to make an adjustment. So I'm going to add a new track. I'm going to add a float track. Float's just a number. I'm going to call this alpha. I'm going to right click in the graph, add a keyframe, and then it's just easier to type in the values. So at time 0, I want a value of 0. Right click, add a keyframe, and then at a time of, let's say, 2, I want a value of 1. So what we're doing is we're going to, so now over a period of 2 seconds, I'll set the total length to 2, this node is going to output a value of 0 to 1 in a linear manner. And once we have that, time-based 0 to 1 output, we can use that to basically translate this object in real time. And how we'll do that is we're basically going to get this door's current location, and then we're going to add a certain amount of movement to it. So let's see what that looks like. So to get started, the node that's going to make this all happen, out of the update, we're going to get a set world position. Sorry, not position, set world location. And you can see when you search in set world location, we get a couple options here. We have one that's referencing our door, one that's referencing our trigger, one that's referencing the default scene route. And we want to open the door, so let's grab the one referencing the door. So it's going to create our little node here, and nodes like this, they're looking for a target, and the target is the door. So this little guy here is just a reference. If you wanted to make a reference, you could just take your door and drag it into the scene to create a little reference. And this is just telling it what object to do this to. So to start, we need to know where the door currently is. So if we take from this door, drag out from it, and we search get world location, we can get the current location of our object. So now if we grab what's called a lerp vector, lerp parentheses vector here, this will allow us to blend between 2 inputs based on an alpha, and an alpha is just 0 to 1. When it's at 0, it'll be A. When it's at 1, it'll be B. And you can see that's what we're going to use our timeline for. So our timeline is going to be the alpha. So over 2 seconds, we're going to go from 0 to 1. So 0 will be the object's current position. and 1 will be the object's current position plus a certain amount. So to get that plus, we're going to take our current location and we're going to do add. And it should give us an add node that looks like this. And we'll take the output of that, put it into the B. If you double click on a line, it'll make a little reroute node so you can get stuff out of the way so you can see. Avoid spaghetti code. Keep your nodes nice and organized. So what we need to add here, what I like to do is if I just go into my viewport here, and I just move my object, you basically just want to see what axis you're moving it on. So I'm moving mine in the negative x direction. And because I'm moving it in the negative x direction for it to open, like here's closed, here's open, I move it along the red arrow, which is the x-axis, and then I'm moving it in the negative direction. So because I'm moving it negative, I know I need to add a negative number here. So it's kind of working in meters, so like 1 square is 1 meter, so I need to open it about, let's say, 3 meters. Then I'll take the output of this lerp, put it into the new location. So again, how the timeline works is every frame it's going to output a new value for our alpha. So that's why this is update, because this is going to fire every frame. So every frame, it's going to set the world location of our door, and the new location is going to be the current location plus a little bit. And we're blending with that alpha. So when you see this in action, it'll start to make a little more sense, and we'll use timelines fairly often, so you'll get lots of opportunities to practice and utilize them in different ways. But as long as we have this going, again, our timeline is just, first option is time 0, value 0. Second keyframe is at time 2, so 2 seconds, value of 1. Event graph, let's compile, let's save, let's run it. So again, if I run into it now, it should just say I need the key. Excellent. Here's my key. I'll go grab my key. Now, when I run into it, it should open the door instead of just deleting it. There she goes. So notice it didn't quite go the direction I thought it was. So in that case, you just adjust. I sent it in a negative, or I sent it positive. I needed it to go negative. And then 3 wasn't enough, so let's do -6. So right here, you just kind of can guess and check here until it does what you want and goes the direction you want. Great, let's try it again. Door, get key, here's my key, go back. Here it goes. Opens the way I want, goes far enough, and I can go through. Great. So again, whatever happens after this branch, after the door, the possibilities are endless. You can do whatever you want. So we can absolutely work out specific scenarios, make the effect work the way you want. We slid the door open, we could swing the door open, we could destroy it, we can play sounds, we can do particle effects, we can make stuff appear, make stuff disappear, basically anything you want. So just know that the main functionality of this is that whole interaction between picking up the key, setting that variable to true, and then on the door, whatever the door is, we check if that variable is true, and then if it's true, we run the true route of the branch, and if it's false, we run the false route. And those can be whatever your heart desires. Yeah, but that's the key in the door. Like I said, it's a great foundational piece of code that you can kind of use going forward. It can be expanded and adjusted in many ways, but on a base level, that's kind of what we're doing here. It's all doors in the end.